Chapter 1. Light and Shadow. I cast my light on you, and my shadows dance like demons at an altar built for their evil mothers behind you. The blades of grass that conceal a bug from its predators. The shadows give the predators a place to wait to strike. I smear the pain of my masterpiece as an expression of temporary contemporaries obstruct the abstract, glorify the villain and sharpen focus on the impermeable nature of my craft. The paint drips from the canvas while the brush speaks to a therapist. He is potential with eyes that have stared too long at the sun, and they listen with ears that have only listened to the noise they create in their head. Art speaks when words lose their meaning. She said she cares and stays distant to keep me safe until the marionette strings began to break and I call out to her. She is always there to tie me back together. Her hands are cold, but I'm alone in crowded spaces, and the connection to her is the only thing that proves I matter. I gave myself away, the fool on her string, and when she is no longer entertained, I'll be returned to her treasure chest, an undecorated plywood crate that she tosses her collections into so she can rest. I'm not the one that is left on the shelf display. Porcelain father figurines that don't have strings. She calls them her dolls. She plays dress up with them and she plays house. She gets angry with them and they fight. She chases them when they leave and she always asks when they are coming back. I build her the way she tells me because the tears she's cried left puddles on her pillowcase, unconscious memories of how her mother treated her father. She has the strength to push me away because she doesn't want to hurt me, whispers she loves me, then kisses my wounds until I fall asleep. When morning comes, her only trace is the dust void ring left behind on a shelf where the valuables she stole once resided. And it was never enough. The pieces of my heart she took to make my heart beat less for her was of insignificant relevance, so I fought harder. When she would grab me from that box and fix my hair and straighten my clothes, in that moment I felt alive. Then she would sit me on the bed and let my toes whisper to the sheets before she would make me dance and jump and shout and sing. She would tell me the most elaborate stories that I believed faithfully. I'd go where she told me and I would practice how she liked me to walk. Her fingers wrapped around the strings tore at my muscle, ripped the flesh from each stitch. Chapter 2. The Princess in the Garden. This is a story she told me one night when her dolls had found other dolls to temporarily place on their shelves. Her curated innocence posed on a shelf in a silk negligee, she started. Once upon a time, a princess who lived in the biggest castle anybody had ever seen, in a kingdom full of trees, fruits, and mystery, had a secret. At night when the sun was sleeping and the stars had all been tucked in, she would sneak out to the garden. She would strip off her silk and walk naked along the rose bushes. She would remove one from the root and strangle the stem, ignoring the thorns until her skin would scream it could bear no more. She knew the thorns in the garden better than she knew the flowers. Her voice hanging on to each word, like a child's voice confessing to a lie. But her eyes like darts in a quiver never sin, always seeming to see straight through me. She continues. The princess knows the squire boy can see her from his wooden shack home. She thinks about him rushing to kiss the gash from the thorn she would proclaim she didn't know were there, and he would have fear and strength in his eyes and in his touch, because he knew that her flesh had been made forbidden by the king. And he loved the king. But he also loved the princess. He had sat perched just high enough to the windowsill to see out into the garden, but hidden from the view of the one that was there. He had painted her portrait 1,000 times in his mind, as accurate as all the things he had seen, and wrote poetry to the little left unseen. She showed me the picture on page 6 where the princess was in the field and the boy's shadow cast itself on the soil from behind the stack of logs. The princess was not the most beautiful girl in the village. She wasn't even deemed valuable enough to pay the dowry the king demanded. She was a bit of a slob. She walked with her pelvis forward and her shoulders slouched. The thing that separated her back from her neck was a patch of callous skin. The castle's physician tried to fix at birth but wasn't equipped. Her heart didn't look much different, as she liked to make up stories to get her sisters and her mother to fight. The princess would say, "I saw Penelope at the lake bathing with the squire boy. She was splashing back and forth in the water and the squire boy was trying to rescue her, I guess. But it didn't make sense because the water was shallow where they were playing. This caused the queen great heartache because the king had made fornication a sin punishable by death if the two people weren't wed in the royal court and the bride hadn't taken counsel from him. So the queen raised her scepter and struck it down on Penelope while Penelope cried out proclaiming her innocence. The queen wound up and struck her again. The princess aglow with delight from the chaos she had caused. And to make matters worse, I am pretty sure I saw that squire boy peeking into my window last night. She laughs and with a momentary pause twists her face up as someone does when they remember an inescapable memory. She points at the word at the top of the page as if beckoning for the definition. Sardonic. She looks at me with confusion. I laugh, knowing I am only a thought in her mind. After all, I'm just a marionette. I didn't believe home was where I belong. She sets me on that treasure chest and proofreads this page to ensure she doesn't stammer on the word or stutter when the meaning touches close in proximity to her. She decides she would read the story to me another time.
Chapter 3. The House of Dolls. I watch her undress, hanging her nightie over the chair as she contemplates what outfit to wear, into which field she will wander. She left Dad a message, be back in a little while, signed your princess. Her father was an author. He gained notoriety with his second book, My Daughter's Dowry, a story of the patriarchy that was a bestseller. He went on to write My Second Daughter's Dowry and My Son's Wife, 2 paid for 1. He was a small-statured man, white hair that matched his pale skin, and the pages in his books he would spend hours in the study with the doors locked. The only book I ever saw in his hand was My Son's Wife. His son was as average as can be, with basic features, brown hair and brown eyes, medium build, and an intellect that didn't bother to think twice. The women in his life would often say, "Don't mind him, he's our little snowflake." His son and his wife lived in the room above the study. His wife was the type of woman men went to war for. She was an exceptional beauty, the type of beautiful that wraps you up and makes anywhere feel like home. She never wore makeup or brushed her curly hair. I'd imagine waking up next to her as the closest image of heaven. God gave the earth to damage. She was sinfully kind. And when you look like her, that's not always a good thing. She would do the dishes and wash the laundry. She would even fold and put the family's clothes away. Sometimes I would see her go in the study and not come out for a length of time. Her husband would sometimes pull me out of the chest. He was rough with the strings. He would make me dance with the other dolls even though I didn't wanna. He would laugh when a slow song would come on and push us together, forcing us to hold each other as if we were in love. His sister caught him one time. She tried to keep it to herself for years until she built up the courage to tell her parents, but by then it had happened too many times and her parents didn't believe her, or they had chosen not to believe her. Reopening those wounds so her parents could kiss them and help her heal must have been tough, but their dismissal left the wounds wide open, often bleeding through the bandage, staining everything she touched. I just want to lay at the altar and be her martyr, replace the scars with flower and heart tattoos, and recent words like believe or dream. But I'm not an artist, and if I were, I wouldn't know where to find the ink. My attempts to find remedies often made a mess of things. Chapter 4. The Weight of Words. She reads the words on the pages through her tears. She touches her neck and her cheek as the words clang out of her mouth between gasps for air. The squire boy put his hands on me. I was so afraid I liked it, I instigated it. And when it finally happened, it felt familiar in all the worst ways. She turns the page. I thought the king would find us. I screamed so loud, I was sure the priest in the tower had heard me. The violence I needed in my passion killed the part of me that was hanging on the princess, ran to tell the king what happened. But her words had betrayed the truth so many times prior, the king dismissed her. He said the squire boy is married to the most beautiful woman in the land. Why would he risk everything, life and limb, his very freedom, to be with you? The king did not lie. His wife was Aphrodite's daughter, kissed by Venus and sculpted from Roman sand by Da Vinci. She lets the book fall to her lap as she stares blankly at the bookshelf where she had grabbed the book. All I see are the empty spaces between the letters on the covers. I turn to look at the bookshelf her eyes are affixed to is a rare midnight oak with books arranged by the author's name, meticulously organized and blanketed with dust. I wonder why her brother's wife never cleans it. She cleans every room but the sisters. I consider the right words to say, but before I can draw the breath to speak, she continues to read, the book still closed on her lap. The princess cried that day. She hadn't cried since she was a baby. She ran to her room and slammed the door behind her. Her tears burned like gasoline on her face, only fueling her anger more. She grabs the nearest thing she can grasp, a stained glass candle holder. She throws it across the room. It hits her armoire and shatters into pieces. The jewelry box beside her bed that had her favorite grandma's jewelry in it. It was next to take flight through the air. The jewelry and broken pieces of the box littered the floor where she stood. She picks up the book and turns it to page 9, showing me the illustration of the princess reaching for a bouquet of flowers on a dresser. The princess vowed that what she was couldn't hurt her.
She grabbed the flowers and ran the thorns down her skin, on the places the bruises and the scars had been. She did not bleed even though the thorns were sharp and pierced her skin. Instead, a rash formed where the cut should have been. I prayed to God, asking him to take my strings and make me whole again. I would do anything he asked of me if he would grant me this wish. I told him if he would make me real again. I would give her my skin, take her rash and blemishes on my skin, surgically remove her scars and wear the bandages, steal her memories and forfeit myself to her nightmare forever to make her smile again. I offered that which was most precious to me, all the memories I had of her and I before I became this man on strings. The kisses in the sunshine, the fights and the dances, I offered everything, but he never answered. She stood up and walked into the bathroom, clutching the book in her hand, and closed the door behind her.
Chapter 5. The Velveteen Prayer. I am the Velveteen Rabbit, and the house is a buzz. I can hear the clamor of feet racing back and forth from inside the chest. Somebody asks, do you have something new, something used, and something blue? The women all snicker as they talk amongst themselves. A voice replies, she has everything she needs. I hear the footsteps soften and the door close. The house becomes as silent as the moment before a firework explodes. It has been months since I've seen her face. I've written 1,000 endings to the book she was reading to me. I fear the actual end will be a dud. I used to think she knew when I was thinking of her, because it wouldn't be long until she would pull me from her chest. Now I'm not so sure. I'm not yet convinced that God didn't hear me and answer my wish. It's dark in here, so I can't see if there are scars on my skin or a rash in the place where I feel an itch. It would seem like I'm the only toy in this box now. I figured she had just put him on the shelf instead. The darkness becomes a canvas where memory and imagination blur. In this void, I am both witness and participant, observer and observed. The strings that once bound me now seem like lifelines to a world I'm no longer certain exists beyond the confines of this wooden tomb. Time moves differently here. Minutes stretch into hours, hours collapse into seconds. I measure existence not by the ticking of clocks, but by the rhythm of my own internal dialogue, conversation with shadows, with possibility, with the ghost of her touch still lingering on my fabric skin.
Chapter 6, Metamorphosis. The silence breaks with the sound of footsteps, not the hurried clamor of before, but deliberate, measured steps. The chest opens and light floods in like a baptism, but the hands that reach for me are different. Older, gentler, unfamiliar. There you are, says a voice I don't recognize. She said you were special. I'm lifted into a room I've never seen, where sunlight streams through windows that frame a garden. Real roses bloom outside, their thorns catching light like tiny daggers, their petals soft as forgiveness. She's getting married today, the woman explains, though I haven't asked. She wanted you to see. Through the window I watch as she walks across the lawn in white silk that catches the breeze. She's beautiful in a way that makes my synthetic heart ache. Not the desperate beauty of someone hiding her insecurity with false bravado, but the quiet radiance of someone who has finally learned to let herself be seen. The man beside her is gentle, patient. When she stumbles slightly on the uneven ground, he steadies her without making her feel weak. When she laughs at something, he whispers. The sound carries on the wind like music I've never heard her make before. She wrote something for you. The woman says, placing a folded paper in my lap. She said you'd understand. The words blur before my button eyes. Dear friend who lived in shadows with me, I am learning that love doesn't require strings. That being held doesn't mean being controlled. That the stories we tell ourselves in the dark aren't always true in the light. You were my companion through the labyrinth of my own making. Now I'm finding my way out, and I need you to know that you were never just a toy. You are hope, disguised as wood, fabric, and string. I'm leaving you with Mrs. Patterson, who runs the children's library. She says children still believe in magic, still know how to love something that isn't real in ways that make it real. Find your next storyteller. Help them write a better ending than the one I almost chose, with love and liberation. Your former puppeteer.
Chapter 7, New Beginnings. The library smells of old paper and new possibilities. Mrs. Patterson places me on a shelf with other forgotten treasures. A one-eyed teddy bear, a set of wooden blocks worn smooth by countless small hands, a kaleidoscope that still catches rainbows in its mirrors. Story time is in an hour. She tells me, I think you'll like it here. Children begin to arrive, their voices a symphony of curiosity and wonder. A little girl with paint-stained fingers stops in front of my shelf. Her eyes are wide, unmarked by the cynicism that turns wonder into weapon. Can I hold him? She asks. Mrs. Patterson nods, and suddenly I'm in small arms that don't seek to control but simply embrace. The girl's heartbeat is steady against my chest, uncomplicated by the twisted rhythms of manipulation and need. What's his story? She asks. And for the first time I realize I have a choice. I can tell the story of shadows and strings, of love that binds and breaks, or I can tell a new story, one where marionettes learn to dance without strings, where love is liberation rather than captivity, where endings are really beginnings in disguise. Once upon a time, I hear myself say through her innocent voice, there was a puppet who dreamed of being real. But he learned that being real isn't about having flesh and blood. It's about having the courage to love without losing yourself. The story continues, born from her imagination and my experience, woven together into something neither of us could create alone. In her hands, I am both teacher and student, both narrator and character, in a tale that rewrites itself with each telling.
Chapter 8. The Garden of Possibility. Seasons pass in the library like pages turn, and I've lived 100 lives through the children who hold me. Told 1,000 stories that grow more beautiful with each retelling. The weight of strings has been replaced by the lightness of wings, not literal ones, but the metaphorical wings that come from knowing you matter. Not because someone needs you, but because you choose to love. Mrs. Patterson tells me that she gets letters sometimes. Updates on the girl who sent me here. She's a therapist now, helping others untangle the strings that bind them to harmful patterns. She works with children, mostly using art and storytelling to help them process trauma. She sent this, Mrs. Patterson says, showing me a painting. It's abstract but somehow familiar, swirls of color that could be shadows dancing, or wings taking flight, or simply the visual representation of hope made manifest at the bottom. In careful script, for the friend who taught me that love without strings is the only love worth having. I think about the book she never finished reading to me. The princess who knew thorns better than flowers. I wonder if she ever completed that story, or if she found an ending where the princess learned to tend to a garden instead of bleeding in one. The afternoon sun slants through the library windows, casting new shadows that don't seem demonic at all. Just the natural troll sequence of light meeting obstacle, creating depth and dimension rather than hiding places for predators. A new child approaches, this one carrying his own darkness in the slump of his shoulders. The way he flinches when adults move too quickly, but his eyes still hold that spark of possibility that all children carry, even the wounded ones. Tell me a story, he whispers. And I do. I tell him about a puppet who learned that real isn't about what you're made of. It's about what you make of yourself. I tell him about a girl who painted her pain into something beautiful. I tell him about gardens where roses grow without thorns, and about love that lifts instead of binds. But mostly, I tell him the story that every child needs to hear, that he matters, that he's worthy of love that doesn't hurt, that his ending is still being written, and he has the power to make it beautiful.
Epilogue. The canvas complete. Years have painted themselves across the library walls in the form of children's artwork. Thank you notes from parents, and the accumulated wisdom that comes from witnessing countless small miracles of healing and growth. I am older now, my fabric worn soft by countless embraces. My paint faded to gentle pastels, but I am not diminished. I am refined, distilled down to my essential purpose. to be a vessel for stories that matter, a companion for those learning to love themselves. Sometimes I dream of her, not the wounded girl who kept me in a box, but the woman she became in my dreams. She has a garden of her own now, where she grows flowers for their beauty rather than their thorns. She tends them with hands that know how to nurture without possessing, how to love without consuming. The last child of the day has gone home, clutching a picture book about a brave little mouse. The library settles into evening quiet, but it's not the oppressive silence of a closed box. It's the peaceful quiet of a sanctuary at rest. Mrs. Patterson adjusts my position on the shelf, her touch gentle and respectful. Another good day, she murmurs, and I know she's right. Tomorrow will bring new children, new stories, new opportunities to prove that love without strings isn't just possible. It's the only love that truly sets us free. The canvas of my existence, once smeared with the dark paint of desperation and control, has been transformed into something purposeful and bright. I am no longer a marionette dancing to someone else's tune. I am a storyteller, a keeper of hope, a living reminder that our endings are not predetermined by our beginnings. And in this truth, I have found something greater than reality. I have found meaning. The light fades, but I am not afraid of the darkness anymore. I know now that dawn always comes, bringing with it new possibilities, new stories, new chances to love and be loved in ways that heal rather than harm. I am real, not because of flesh and blood, but because of purpose and love freely given. And that is the most beautiful story of all. The end, until the next story.